Hello, what's up, dear YouTube viewers? The World Cup is already over, and club football has not started yet. But in the meantime, we get one of the most interesting parts of soccer, the transfer window, where players switch clubs. And I just couldn't miss on that opportunity. In this video, I'm gonna talk about the transfers that I dream that would happen and which players going to which clubs I dream of happening. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those transfers will happen, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the clubs are negotiating about it. Some of those transfers are actually actively being negotiated. Some of those transfers are not being negotiated at all. So I'm not saying those transfers will happen. I'm just saying I want them to happen. So I will explain why I want it to happen and if they have a real chance of happening. Last season, some of the transfers that I dream about actually did end up happening, such as the transfer of Eberechi Eze to Arsenal and the transfer of Ibrahima Kanate to Real Madrid, even though it happened 1 year later. Other transfers just didn't end up happening, such as Andrei Lunin to Inter Milan, Arda Güler to Borussia Dortmund, or Gianluigi Donnarumma to Bayern Munich. The reason why I brought that up is because, like I said before, just because I dream of a certain transfer does not mean it will happen. It just means that I want it to happen. Okay, now the first transfer that I want to happen is Alex Scott going to Liverpool. In case you don't know who that is, it's a Bournemouth midfielder and who has been called up for the English national football team a couple of times. Now, Liverpool already has 4 midfielders: Alexis McAllister, Dominic Szoboszlai, Wataru Endo, and Ryan Gravenberch, which may seem like enough. But for the football of Anthony Iraola, who Liverpool appointed, a midfielder is literally the most important position. And for a club playing both in the English Premier League and the Champions League, 4 people per position is definitely not enough, especially given the quality of those 4 people. Of course, they are not bad players, but they have raised some questions. For example, Alexis McAllister failed last season, Ryan Gravenberch failed both last season and the World Cup. So I do absolutely think that Liverpool needs somebody else at this position. Now, there has been rumors about many players, starting from Eduardo Camavinga and ending with Adam Wharton. But I personally think that the best option would be Alex Scott, because he has played under Iraola at Bournemouth and he knows his requirements. Now, I know, just because a player has played under a coach in one club doesn't mean that he will be successful in another. We also have players from Ajax who were successful under Ten Hag in that club didn't end up being so successful at Manchester United. But I think the problem is not so in Ten Hag himself as it is in the leadership of Manchester United. I'm really sorry to all fans of that club. I really don't want to offend you guys. Your club has truly achieved great things in the past, but the things that your leadership has been doing with that club are not ideal. Right now, they are slowly heading the right way with Carrick, but it will take some time. On the other hand, Liverpool's leadership has been consistent in the last couple of years, even if having a questionable transfer window last year. So I think that Liverpool will not repeat the risk of Manchester United and that Alex Scott has a great potential at Liverpool. Right now there has been rumors about negotiation between the clubs, but unfortunately they have not gotten far yet, so we'll just have to see what will happen next. Okay, next up is Gonzalo Ignacio to Liverpool. Now, last time Liverpool were actively interested in Mark Gehi, and it was one of the transfers that I had on my dream list, but unfortunately they focused all of their energy on Alexander Isak, and as a result ended up missing Gehi to Manchester City. And this was one of the reasons why they had a poor season, because Van Dijk can still do some great things, but he can't be the starter for the team every time, and he needs a reliable backup. And Ibrahima Kanate spent all his time thinking about Real Madrid. So Liverpool really suffered without a defender, and they do need another one. Now they signed Jeremy Jacquet, and sure, in 2 or 3 years he could be a starter for Liverpool, but right now he is young. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that Jeremy Jacquet is a horrible player or that he will fail, but I just don't think he will succeed at this age. I think he needs to be on the bench for 2-3 years, slowly come out and be ready for Liverpool starters, and then finally get in there. Now, I do think that Ignacio would be a perfect fit for Liverpool, because he has consistently demonstrated his level at both Sporting and the Portuguese national football team. I think if he switches to Liverpool, every side will win. Liverpool will get a top level defender for another 2-3 years. Ignacio will get the opportunity to play in a top European club, and Sporting will get a lot of money. Now, Ignacio is not young, so he will not be the starter for Liverpool for the next 10 years or so, but he absolutely has the potential to be the starter for the next 2 or 3 years. So I think this could be a great idea. Get Ignacio, make him the starter for 2 or 3 years, and then in 2 or 3 years, once he is ready to retire and head to a league like the Saudi League or the Turkish League, where older players tend to go, then Jacquet will already be ready and fill in this position. So I think Ignacio to Liverpool will be a good idea. Unfortunately, right now, there have not been any rumors about negotiation between the two clubs, but we will just have to see if that will change. Now, as I was already preparing to make that video, there were rumors that Liverpool is preparing to sign Ronald Araujo, which isn't the worst defender they could have, but I still think Ignacio would be better. So we'll just have to see what happens. Okay, next up is Adam Wharton or Carlos Baleba to Manchester United. Now, Manchester United already signed Andre Santos and Yuri Tillmans, but I think they still need more midfielders, because even 3 top-level midfielders is still not good enough for a European club wanting to fight for both the English Premier League and the Champions League. And I still think they need more. I think Adam Wharton or Carlos Baleba would be a great fit, because both of them are young and already adapted to the English Premier League, because they played in the Premier League. There were rumors about Manchester United being interested in both of those guys. However, unfortunately for them, both of their clubs demand high fees for them. So we will just have to see if Manchester United would be willing to pay the price. But I personally think they should, because they have already paid a lot of money for players in the past, such as for Anthony from Manchester United. So I think if they have that money, they absolutely should take the risk and pay. Especially given that both of those players are young and they have the potential to start for a lot of years. Okay, next up is Dusan Vlahovic to Arsenal. Now there were rumors about Vinicius signing to Arsenal, but at the end they didn't end up happening. And it made many Arsenal fans upset, but I honestly think that it was for the better. Because Vinicius, as much as a good player he is known to have some egoistical traits. For example, we also how he argued with Xabi Alonso after being substituted. And we all know that Mikel Arteta is just not the kind of guy who is okay with being argued with himself. Sure, he is not an absolute dictator. He has supported players in the past, such as Gabriel Martinelli, but he is also used to showing that he is the boss. And he will absolutely not tolerate a player like Vinicius, who wants to start in every match. So I think that if Vinicius ended up coming to Arsenal, one of those three things would have happened. Either Vinicius would have gotten Arteta fired, or Arsenal would want to sell Vinicius because they would realize that he is not good with Arteta's system, or maybe Arteta would have disciplined Vinicius. But unfortunately, I don't think that's likely, because Vinicius is no longer a young player. He's already a mature man. And at this age, players rarely tend to be disciplined well. So I think the fact that Vinicius didn't go to Arsenal is honestly good. And I also think that Arsenal doesn't need a top level striker the level of Vinicius. But they do absolutely need a backup striker. Because they have Saka, Gyökeres, Havertz, but as soon as one of those players gets injured, it becomes a problem. So I think Arsenal absolutely need a backup striker, and this is where Dusan Vlahovic could fit perfectly. Because he has scored a lot of goals for Juventus, even if not being consistent. I don't think he is ready to start in every game, but I think he could absolutely be a reliable backup option. And I think he could benefit from that too. Because he would want to win a trophy after going trophyless with Juventus for a long time. There have been rumors about Arsenal being interested in him in the past, but it didn't end up happening. So right now I don't know if this transfer will happen, but I think it would benefit both Arsenal and Vlahovic if it happened. Okay, next up is Rodrigo to Tottenham. Now this is kind of controversial, but I will explain why. So now that Real Madrid got Yan Diomande and renewed Vinicius, it's clear who will be the main starters. Vinicius, Diomande, and Mbappe. I just don't see Rodrigo being able to put either of them out of the squad. Because Diomande was paid huge money for, and it makes no sense to put a player who you paid this much money for on the bench in favor of a player who you already have. And Vinicius and Mbappe are both getting a lot of money and have been the stars of this team. So I don't think that Rodrigo will be able to be the main star of that team. Now, if he is satisfied with the role of a bench player, sure, it's his choice. But I think that at this age, most players would want to finally show off something instead of being on the bench. So I absolutely think that Rodrigo needs to go to a different club. And I think all three sides could win from it. Real Madrid could get a lot of money to sign another player who they might need. Rodrigo could become the starter, and Tottenham could get a top-level European star. Now you might ask, why Tottenham, given that they are not even in the Champions League? Now, Rodrigo has already won the Champions League and he has already played in the Champions League many times. Again, I'm not Rodrigo's agent, of course, I don't have contacts with him, but if I was in Rodrigo's shoes right now, I think what he needs most is a club where he can be the main star, even if it's not a Champions League club. So I absolutely think that Rodrigo should take the risk and attempt to go to Tottenham. Now, Tottenham themselves would also benefit because their team is crazily stuck in all other lines. They have one of the best goalkeepers, Vicario, who has showed some consistent level for the team. They have a European champion, Pedro Porro in the defense. They have a good midfield with Tonali, good defense with players like Andrew Robertson, who is very experienced. But then when it comes to attack, and you look at the attack, you're like, what is this? Like, they have Solanke, they have Richarlison, and they're not the worst players, but they're nowhere near the level of a top club. So I think Liverpool absolutely needs somebody else in that position. Oh, sorry, not Liverpool. I think Tottenham absolutely needs somebody else in the attack. And I think Rodrigo could be a good player. Unfortunately, there have not been any rumors about negotiations between the clubs, but I really hopeful that it will happen. Okay, next up is Alvaro Carreras, to Chelsea. Now, Real Madrid has already signed Marc Cucurella, and I think it's clear that he will be the main starter for that team. On the other hand, Alvaro Carreras will probably go on the bench. And many young talents don't want to be at the bench at such young age, even if it's in a top club. So I think Alvaro Carreras should go somewhere. And I think Chelsea is the best place because Carreras has shown really good football under Xabi Alonso until he got fired. And Chelsea actually needs a replacement now that Cucurella is gone. So I think this transfer could be useful for Carreras because he will reunite with the coach under whom he has shown his best form. Could be useful for Chelsea and could be useful for Real Madrid too because they will get some money. Now, unfortunately, right now there have not been any rumors about that transfer and more rumors about Chelsea signing a player from Rayo Vallecano, but I'm still hopeful that it will happen. Okay, next up is Mike Maignan, Diego Costa to Chelsea. Now, Chelsea has Robert Sanchez, and he is not the worst goalkeeper, but he is also not good enough for a top club. I still think that Chelsea absolutely needs a top level goalkeeper. I think either Mike Maignan or Diego Costa could make excellent fits. Because Maignan has already had enough at AC Milan and it's clear that he has outgrown that club. And Costa already deserves to go to a top club in Europe from Porto long ago. Last year I wanted him to go to Manchester United, but unfortunately for him, Manchester United got Sammy Lammens and they are satisfied right now. So he should pick a different club. Right now I think Chelsea or Bayern are the ones that would need him most. So I definitely dream of either of those transfers happening. Either Diego Costa to Chelsea and Mike Maignan to Bayern, or Diego Costa to Bayern and Mike Maignan to Chelsea. because I feel like both of those clubs need a new goalkeeper, and both of those goalkeepers need to go to a top club. Bayern has been stuck with Manuel Neuer recently, and sure, he was a goalkeeper in the past. He was a good goalkeeper in the past, but right now he is no longer at his prime. And last time, his mistakes against PSG was part of what costed Bayern the place. So I think that they absolutely need a new goalkeeper. Okay, next is Angelo Stiller to Real Madrid. And this was a transfer that I dreamed of last year too. And unfortunately, they never ended up signing him. And this is part of the reason why they failed the season, because they truly lacked a top level midfielder who would control the tempo. Now, there were some rumors about them being interested in Rodri, but at the end, right now, Barcelona is the favorite, so I don't think Rodri will sign for the club. However, I still think Angelo Stiller could be a good option, even if risky. Because Angelo Stiller had a few phenomenal seasons at Stuttgart, and some people are already comparing him to Toni Kroos. So I think if he goes to Real Madrid, he could become the new Toni Kroos there and be the figure that they are lacking all along, and help them win the Champions League, because they absolutely got some top level players, and the World Cup proved us this, because their players had shown some insane statistics at the World Cup. But when it comes to playing as a team, they don't really end up playing good. And I think a top level midfielder could be something that they lack. So, if they were to sign Angelo Stiller, I think it could solve the problem. Now, sure, Angelo Stiller signing does carry some level of risk, because Bundesliga is not the same as La Liga. But every club has to risk sometimes. If you remember when Real Madrid signed Casemiro, some people were also skeptical, and so were some people skeptical when they signed Luka Modric. But at the end, they never regretted it. So I think the situation with Angelo Stiller could be the same. If he is successful, I think Real Madrid could absolutely get a jackpot. If he is unsuccessful, then Real Madrid will risk, but at the end the risk is not catastrophic and they can afford one bad transfer. Okay, next up is Lautaro Martinez to Barcelona. Barcelona needs a striker given that Alvarez hasn't had, given that Lewandowski is gone. There were rumors about Alvarez, but Atletico just doesn't want to let him go for cheap. However, I think Martinez could actually be an even better alternative. He has already demonstrated his level for both Inter Milan and the Argentine national football team, and I think his transfer to a top club is long deserved. Sorry to Inter, they are a good club in the Serie A, but let's be honest, right now they are nowhere near to the level of clubs like Barcelona, PSG, or Manchester City or Arsenal. So I think Lautaro Martinez deserves to try his strengths in one of those clubs. Now I know many Inter fans could talk about how Inter eliminated Barcelona the time before us, but let's be honest, overall Barcelona is still stronger. I think Lautaro Martinez could absolutely be a great fit for this team. And I think he will cost much cheaper than Alvarez. So I think Barcelona should give it a try. Okay, next up is Emerick Laporte to Barcelona. Now Barcelona still lacks another defender, especially given that Ronald Araujo will go soon and that they have let go of some other defenders in the past, such as Inigo Martinez. So I think they do need another defender. And Emerick Laporte would fill that role better than anyone. He has shown good compassion with Cubarsi in the Spain national football team. And he has a lot of experience. Atletico Bilbao will require some money for him, but it will not be catastrophical amount for Barcelona, given that he is already old. There have been rumors about negotiation between the two clubs, but unfortunately they are still far. Okay, and finally, one last transfer to Barcelona today is Rodri. Barcelona still needs a good level midfielder. And Rodri could fill in that role better than anyone. We have seen how he is compatible with Pedri in the Spanish national football team, and I think if he switches to Barcelona, it could make Barcelona much more stronger. Almost as strong as the Spain national football team themselves, especially given that many players of that club of that team are already from Barcelona. So I think if they sign Laporte and Rodri, they could finally even win the Champions League. For Rodri, I think it will also be a beneficial transfer, because he has shown his best football around teammates from Barcelona in the Spanish national football team. So I think he will show off good football in Barcelona too. And he has already won everything with Manchester City. And if he wins the La Liga title with Barcelona and maybe the Champions League, he will be for sure considered one of the greatest players of all time. Okay, next up is Christian Romero to Atletico Madrid. Now, Atletico Madrid historically was known for their good defenders who are ready to almost be warriors on the field, similar to what we saw in the Paraguay versus France game or in the Getafe games versus other clubs. We can like or dislike this style of football, but this is just Atletico's kind of football. And unfortunately for them, after Diego Godin has been gone, they haven't really had a midfield, they haven't really had a defender like that. And Christian Romero could fill in that role perfectly, because he has demonstrated good level for both Tottenham and the Argentine national football team. And he has shown that he is capable of fighting for a team when it's necessary. Not physically, of course, but mentally. The only problem is that he is not the most disciplined player, but like I said before, this is actually exactly what Atletico has been known for. So I think this transfer could be beneficial for both sides. Atletico could get a top level defender, and Romero could finally go to a club where he will feel more appreciated, because right now there have been rumors about conflicts between him and Tottenham. Okay, next up, now this is really controversial, is Andrei Lunin to AC Milan. And this is a transfer that I as a Ukrainian want to see most, actually. Because I have said this last time already, or no, I haven't said this, but I wrote about it before, that Andrei Lunin just cannot sit at Real Madrid if he wants to have a good career. Now, I'm not having any offense against Real Madrid. It's one of the greatest clubs out there. But when you are the reserve goalkeeper, there is just no way that your career can develop. Now, once again, maybe Lunin is satisfied with his role. And if he is, then whatever, it's up to him. But I personally think that it would be better if he goes to a club where he can start in every game. It would be better both for him and his career and for the Ukrainian national football team, which I actively support. Because Ukraine needs a goalkeeper who would be consistent every time. And if Lunin just sit on the bench at Real Madrid, he will not be able to show off his level for Ukraine national football team, because he will arrive untrained. So for me, I think it's time for Lunin to leave. Now the question is just where. Now I think AC Milan could be a good option, because like I said before, I want to see Manyan go to Bayern or Chelsea, and this is where Lunin could be a great replacement. Okay, next up is Diego Costa or Mike Maignan to Bayern, which is something I already talked about before, so I will just skip it. Okay, next up is Arda Güler or Omar Marmoush to Borussia Dortmund or RB Leipzig, meaning either Omar Marmoush to Borussia Dortmund and Arda Güler to RB Leipzig, or Arda Güler to Borussia Dortmund and Omar Marmoush to RB Leipzig. Now the situation with Güler is the same as the situation with Lunin and Rodrigo. Now that Real Madrid signed Yan Diomande, I just don't see how Güler could do anything with the top three of Vinicius, Mbappe and Diomande and get himself a spot. I think if Güler wants to play in every match, it's time to leave. Now I know Real Madrid has been his dream, but I think that being on the bench at Real Madrid will not do anything good to his career. And I think it's time to leave to a different club. I think both RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund could be excellent fit, because both of those clubs has already sold their key attacking pieces. That's Yan Diomande and Karim Adeyemi respectively. So they need a new striker. And this is where a Güler or Marmoush could fit perfectly. Güler will get a club where he will start in every single game and maybe even be the main star of those teams. Such as I just don't see a player who is more valuable in either Dortmund or Leipzig than Güler. Sure, Antonio Nusa maybe, but I think Güler is still more valuable. So I think Güler will definitely benefit from this transfer. And so will their clubs, because both of those clubs finally need a truly prospective player if they want to fight for European level football. Okay, now that we talk about Güler, let's talk about Omar Marmoush. Now, it's clear by now that Omar Marmoush will not get Erling Haaland out of the squad. There is just no way that's happening, because Erling Haaland is simply one of the best players out there. And it's absolutely impossible for Marmoush to do anything. And it's time for him to leave. Again, at this age, people don't want to sit on the bench. Now, there have been rumors about him going to another English Premier League such as Tottenham or Liverpool. But I personally don't think it's the best option for Marmoush, because he has shown himself good in Bundesliga, and I think he will do great in a different Bundesliga club, just maybe higher in status than Eintracht Frankfurt. I think both Borussia Dortmund and RB Leipzig could be excellent clubs for him. Now, it does not mean that the whole English Premier League experience is a failure. Many players have failed in the English Premier League on the first attempt and then return and finally showed up their level. As a matter of fact, Marmoush Egyptian teammate Mohamed Salah is a great example. So I think Marmoush could still show off some good level in the English Premier League in the future for Manchester City or for another club, but right now he absolutely needs to go to a different club. Okay, the one before last is Christian Pulisic to PSG. Now PSG's attacking line is just stacked. Dembele, Kvaratskhelia and Doué are all good players. Sure, Dembele is getting older, but I still think for 2 or 3 more years he could still be the main player. What they need now is a reserve player, because two of their reserve players, Ramos and Lee Kwan-in, have already left, and rumor has it that Barcola will follow soon. So I think PSG needs a new reserve striker, and Pulisic could fit that role perfectly, because in the past there have been rumors about Pulisic going to a top club after showing good statistics at AC Milan, but I just don't see him being the main starter because he is already old and cannot start in every single game, but he could still be a good bench player. I think if Pulisic were to go to PSG, this transfer would benefit all three sides. Milan would make a lot of money, which they desperately need. PSG would get a good reserve player, and Pulisic would get an opportunity to win the Champions League. Because as of right now at least, PSG are one of the main favorites. Especially given that they won it for 2 times in a row prior. Again, finally, Alexei Batrakov to a European club. Now, for those of you who don't know who that is, he is a young Russian Premier League talent who has showed off some good statistics. Now, there have been rumors about PSG being interested in him, but I personally don't think he is ready for a true European top club. However, I still think that he could be ready for a European mid-level club, such as Bayer Leverkusen, West Ham or Sevilla. I feel like this would allow him to better develop himself and start more often. Maybe if he proves himself at this club, in the future maybe he can go to a top club, the level of PSG, or maybe another top club. But for now I think a mid-table club would be better. I think he's absolutely ready for one, given his stats at the Russian Premier League. Okay, there you have my dream list. Unfortunately, I do not think that each and every one of those transfers will happen, but I am at least hopeful that some of them will. Okay, if you like this video, give it a thumb up. If you dislike it, give it a thumb down. Subscribe to my channel. Leave comments. Hope you have a good day. Bye guys.